You may be asking yourself, why shouldn't I vote for Mike Simpson in the primary election in 2026 in May? Why not vote for him? He seems like a nice enough guy. I've actually never met him in person, but I can tell he's nice, he's friendly, and on a lot of issues, he's voted in ways that I've agreed with. Therefore, what's the problem? Why not vote for him again? There are three things that I urge you to think about relating to Mike Simpson. For one, he has been a politician for more than 40 years. He was in the state legislature here in Boise for many years, including Speaker of the House here. And in this year, I think he's going into his 27th year in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., in Congress. I'm very much in favor of term limits. If term limits had been in place, Mike Simpson would have stopped being a congressman 15 years ago. Serving in Congress should never be a career. At most, it should be a number of years that somebody serves, but not as his primary career, just a secondary way of working for a few years. I really think that term limits should be 2 terms in the Senate, which is 12 years. So the House, in mirroring that, I think should have 6 terms at most, which would be 12 years in the House. If Mike Simpson had served for 12 years, he would have been out of Congress for the past 15. Another thing about Congressman Mike Simpson is his age. He will turn 75 in September 2025. If he wins this next election, he will still be in Congress at the age of 78. That, to me, is quite old for somebody to be in Congress. And, you know, he's still a sharp guy and he's doing fine, but he is definitely getting older. And when you get old like that, your brain gets foggier, you get out of touch. I'm kind of old, but I'm 15 years younger than he is. So if I win this and if I stick to my term limits, which I will leave Congress younger than the age that he is right now. Probably the biggest issue that I have with Congressman Mike Simpson is his spending. I have on my website demonstrated how dozens upon dozens of bills that he's voted for, I would have voted no on. Spending bills, big ones, some of them trillions of dollars. The national debt when he started was, I think, at $7 trillion. It is now $37 trillion. I've seen him do very little to reduce the growth of that debt. To me, that's my number one issue. So I think he and I would be very, very different in our voting habits, particularly with spending bills. There's no better example of this than his proposal to breach 4 dams on the Snake River. I think that I understand where he's coming from. He loves the outdoors in this great state of Idaho, and he dreams of a day, maybe it was like this in his youth, when streams and rivers were red with salmon at a certain time of year that were swimming upstream from the ocean, and those salmon runs have long since either ceased or been cut way, way back for multiple reasons. And I think that he would love to try to bring it back, at least to some extent, to have those salmon populations grow and become strong. And I understand and respect that. I think that there is merit in that to some extent. There definitely is an other side to that issue where breaching these 4 dams on the Snake would have huge economic implications for farmers, for people that go boating on those rivers, for commerce, for towns, for water supply, et cetera, et cetera. And it's fascinating to me that Congressman Simpson's proposal doesn't call for tearing down the dams or destroying or removing the dams, but rather an expensive way of breaching them along the side. And he is not ashamed to admit that his reasoning for that is that he's not at all sure that this proposal will actually work. And if after X number of years we find that salmon populations have not been restored by this process, then we can go back to having the dams how they were before. That's why he just wants to breach them. So it's kind of an admission that, hey, this is a bit of a stab in the dark. All of that notwithstanding, my biggest issue with it, my biggest concern is the expense of the thing. In conjunction with his proposal to breach these 4 dams, his proposal includes an expenditure of $33.5 billion to make this all work. Part of that is, reparations to the farmers that would be suffering and the economies and so on. But the entire budget for the state of Idaho in a year is, I think, $8 or $9 billion, something like that. So he's essentially proposing for 4 or 5 times the budget of the entire state of Idaho for this one pet project that might or might not help salmon. That to me is indicative of a deeper issue that in all of his years in Congress and in Washington, he has lost touch with how much things cost and with spending. That's just, to me, a crazy, huge amount of money. I know as a percentage of the total budget, it's maybe small, a drop in the ocean or whatever, but $33.5 billion is just a wildly huge amount of money. And I think he is ready to just, vote yes and sign a piece of paper and have his colleagues vote yes and not give it a second thought. And that, to me, underscores the fact that he's a big spender on this and many, many other things. And that, I think, is reckless, irresponsible, and needs to be changed.